Welcome to another episode of the Mobycon Academy Spotlight series, where we put the spotlight on the unseen heroes of the Dutch transportation system. Today we're talking about curbs, and I'm not alone. I'm joined by my colleague Nick Falbo from Portland. Welcome, Nick.
Thanks, Lennart.
Now, you wanted to talk about curbs.
I wanted to talk about curbs. Yeah. I've been here for the last few days, riding around, walking around, and I think it doesn't, maybe make sense at first, but I've really taken away a lot looking at all the curbs. These boundaries between your sidewalk and your bikeway and the road. They're
just curbs, Nick.
They're not just curbs. They're more than that. They're more than, maybe it's where I'm from. They are just curbs.
Yeah.
Where I'm from, curbs are these 6-inch monster ledges, cliffs. Sometimes cliffs. If you're walking, you can step off of a curb, but you've got to build this massive ramp to let you ramp down to the street. If you're biking, you're afraid of that curb. You're trying to stay away from that curb. But I think what I've noticed here, the curbs they're not unnoticeable, but they're not anything to be afraid of.
They're not a hazard.
They're not a hazard. They're easy to step down from. They're easy to bike over when needed. Yeah. And in fact, actually, what I really loved is the way the curbs are designed to be biked over. There's not just vertical curbs that are low height, but there are these nice angled curbs that welcome you as a bicyclist to make those transitions when needed.
You're definitely the most enthusiastic person I've heard speaking about curbs in all my life, so that's a good start. So the first question is, what is it? Why are these curbs so important to you? We have a little picture of a curb to a Dutch person. That's just a curb.
Yeah, this is a nice little ramped curb. The bikeways on one side, the walkways on the other. I've seen a lot of these in construction where it lets you easily make it your way onto the sidewalk, maybe to get to bike parking or get to a business that you want to buy a coffee or a beer from. Really welcome you into the pedestrian space. And I think it tells a story about the way bicyclists and pedestrians fit together, perhaps more than bicyclists and cars.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good point. And I mean, the cyclist does have to get to its destination somewhere. So you have to have that access, right? If you would block them off from the sidewalk at all stages, then they would never be able to get off the cycleway easily.
And how would that work? How it normally works in America is you kind of pull off to the side, you kind of get off and you lift your bike off and you're doing this little dance to get out of the bike lane. Here, you kind of roll on up, you stop, and you're out of everybody's way. And I think the other thing that happens here is this curb in particular, very friendly to a bicyclist that wants to come up, but even the vertical curbs here are bicycle-friendly curbs. They're not as tall as the sort of 6-inch curbs that we have in the States.
Slightly rounded.
What we have, the thing is, the ones in the States, I'm afraid of. If I'm riding my bike next to that curb, I've got to keep a distance, a shy distance from that curb. And so we may have bike lanes that are the same width, protected bike lanes, the same width as those that are here in the Netherlands. 2 meters, 6.5 feet. This is enough space for two people to ride side by side here. But you make the bike lane that same width in America with two honking curbs on each side, and you're staying away from it a foot and a half. You no longer have the same amount of space. So we are actually forfeiting functional space because of our reliance on these kind of bicycle unfriendly curbs, our standard curb height.
So why do you have them? Why are they 6 inches tall?
It's a really great question. I've never figured out exactly where that original 6-inch kind of standard came from. But, you talk to people today, and it's a lot about collecting water drainage to the curb and moves to the stormwater system.
You must get a lot of rain.
Yeah, sure. And, in fact, in some cities that you do see flash floods, I have seen even higher curbs be built. So, those curb heights come into play. You also, I think there's a desire to not have it be too low. There's we have a real strong obligation to accessibility. And I think we want to make sure that we're not creating hazards. There's a lot of concerns that there's kind of a low height curb could be a tripping hazard. But I think that there is a happy medium that's still friendly for bicycling, but not causing problems for anyone else.
And the height of the curb, like you say, it's important to have a detectable differential, right? It makes sense.
Yes.
But it has a backside as well. There's another side to that story. Like the higher the curb, the longer the ramp. Fewer ramps.
In order to do an accessible ramp, you kind of find yourself chasing that height. So if it's a 6-inch curb, you need a 6-foot ramp, and then you add a flat landing to that, and you might already be creating a distance that your sidewalk's not even big enough to accommodate. And so you find us actually, ironically, in those conditions, we lower the sidewalk down to 4 inches. We're already doing the same thing that you're doing here, but just in those special places. I'd love to see more of this incorporated here into America.
So I guess we've answered the second question already. Like, do we need it? Yes, we absolutely need it. But some other reasons, why do we need it? And is there something to say for now? Maybe we should keep the 6-inch, right? I don't want those pesky cyclists on my footpath.
Sure. No, I mean, I think just creating a more unified walking and biking space while still having a very strong separation. What you start to see is it's either on the road, 6 inches down, or when we do build these raised bike lanes, we tend to build them at sidewalk level. Introducing a whole different set of problems of, you don't want it to be too easy for a bicyclist to kind of accidentally get onto the sidewalk or vice versa, pedestrians to kind of mindlessly wander into a bike lane. You don't want either of those options. And so what you've got here is a very clear separation. If you're walking, you notice when you take that step down. And I think that's the key. And you're kind of operating in that sweet spot. So I think the curbs here really live in that sweet spot, and that's maybe what I love so much about them.
And they're prefabricated, but that is a whole new episode.
Well, it probably is a whole new episode, but what it does mean is that every city is using the same form to build their kind of foundations between their spaces, their walking space, their biking space, and their roadway space.
It's instantly recognizable. Everybody knows wherever you go in the country, you will find the same type of facilities and the same type of treatments. And it comes down to the details of the same type of curbs that you'll know that you can ride up to.
Exactly. So it creates a standardization that's easy to work within.
And can we have it in North America? What would it take to get cities or counties or states to adopt a lower curb height? Because it doesn't sound that hard. Is that change the rule here?
Great question. I think it might be hard to standardize on it, but maybe for new construction, maybe there's a possibility of saying we could do something differently. I think where you might most likely to see it would be in the creation of a raised bike lane project, where it's the curb heights that the bike lane relates to the sidewalk and the roadway, that those heights are reduced. I suspect for a number of reasons, we're going to keep having a big curb height as it connects into the roadway itself. But
which is not necessarily a bad thing, right? Because you do want to keep those cars out of the bike lane.
You do. You absolutely. You don't want to make it too easy. Okay, maybe let me take that back. There is one thing I've noticed here, that is because the curbs are low, it is a lot easier for cars and trucks to get up over them. So whether that is I have seen some cars parked on the side of a sidewalk a little bit, or maybe it's a vehicle turning over an island, they can do that with no problem at all. And so I think that yes, maybe a tall curb does have some added benefit of making it more difficult for cars to get up and over these islands and sidewalks. And
it has a place as a protection device, but not to protect pedestrians from cyclists, because that's a bit much.
Perhaps.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad we solved that. Well, thank you very much for what I thought was a very surprisingly entertaining episode on curbs. We hope you found it interesting, and we hope to see you again on the next episode of the Mobycon Academy Spotlight series.